Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taylist's first standout session. It's 1 o'clock on the 6th of October. Hello, if you're watching live. Hello, is that my face? Yes. Hello, and if you're watching the recording later, fantastic. Hopefully, I'm thinner by now. As we start recording, immediately they've started drilling outside the street, but hopefully you can't hear that. So as I say, this is our first standout session. The goals of the standout session are to answer your questions. So if you have questions on copywriting, digital marketing, storytelling, persuasion, writing with influence, those are all things that we do at Taylist, and we're happy to answer your questions, which some people have asked in advance. So I put up a LinkedIn post this morning. I've got some questions from that. You can go to taylist.agency/SOS and you'll go to the standout sessions page there and you can sign up and ask us a question there. So we have some questions, but what I thought we might try every week is starting with a set topic that I've picked in advance. And this week, that topic is just simple storytelling tips. And the reason I've chosen storytelling tips is because I think it's one of those things that storytelling is a word that I have trouble with because it's so abused. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It is a narrative, to use another word that is abused. So a case study, for instance, can be a story. Your client had a problem. They came to you. These things happened in the middle. There were problems and challenges, and together you overcame them, and then there was a great result. That's the end. That's a story. But these days we use storytelling almost to describe anything that's interesting. So you've probably been told in your marketing, you need to do more storytelling. And if you're anything like me, you probably thought, well, what the hell does that mean? But I was the other day at our local farmers market and I saw such a great, simple example of storytelling that I wanted to share it with you. And that example was there is a family of farmers who come down to the market every Sunday, husband, wife, 3 children, fantastic produce. And just where you pay, they have one of those plastic sleeve folders of photographs of life on the farm. And so you see the farm and the tractor and the children picking the harvest and just get a real sense that, yeah, this is food that is coming from real people from a real farm. And I wanted to take a picture of that to show you. So I asked Gary, the farmer, and he didn't want to because his kids are in the picture. So he didn't want to splash his kids all over the internet. But I wanted to use that as an example because I think it's that behind the scenes stuff that a lot of us, and I include us in that, are not very good at doing. If you follow Taylist on Facebook or Instagram, you'll see that we're trying to get better at it, but it's something that doesn't come naturally necessarily to all of us to think, let me take a photograph of what I'm doing today. But there was a second example that I wanted to show you that I think is fabulous, and it's on Facebook. It's a store that I follow on Facebook because Laura, who is our editor, has done some work for Bunty's General Store because they're in her hometown outside Glasgow, or not her hometown, where she lives, outside Glasgow. And this popped up in my feed because I follow them. And I thought this was just such a great example of something that's easy to do. So Bunty's General Store is a local shop in a village with deli elements. So they went on a fact-finding trip to London to get some inspiration. And so you can see it's just a simple story about walking 45,000 steps around London, getting some inspiration, just easy selfie pictures and shots of some of the great examples of delis that they saw while they were walking those 45,000 steps. And if you're anything like me, when you take a picture like that, you think, well, who the hell is going to care, right? Like, oh, yeah, this is where I'm at this deli. Why should I take a picture? The picture's not great. But actually, I know from my own experience, when I put something up that's like this, I do get engagement and I do get likes and I do get people commenting on it and I do get people mentioning it to me. So a simple storytelling tip from my point of view is to think, what do you do in the background that you take for granted? Like, it might seem super obvious that I run a shop, I'm going to go and look at other shops, but why not? take a picture and put it up and see where you go. And as I say, you'll see how we try to do that, and I'd be interested to see, how you go during the day. So that was the simple storytelling tip that I wanted to suggest to you. And it'd be great if you do try it. If you do try putting up a few things in your socials, let me know how they go, because I think it would be interesting to see if you see more engagement from that personal behind the scenes stuff than you see otherwise. Now, the promise of the standout session is that every Wednesday at 1:00, I'm going to go live and answer your questions. But as I say, with just this 5 minutes of background, if you find the videos helpful, we'd love it if you subscribed, liked, followed, commented, engaged. It all encourages us to keep going. I suppose on YouTube, you can downvote it. So if you want to encourage me to shut up and not do this anymore, you can hit the thumbs down on YouTube. But I'd love it if you hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe, comment, wherever you are. If you're watching live on LinkedIn and you comment, it doesn't actually show up in front of us. So we are trying to monitor that. But if you have a question as we're going, please, ask it. You can ask it in the comments on YouTube. You can ask it in the comments on Facebook, and we'll keep an eye on the comments in LinkedIn, but they don't feed through to this system. So to start with the question, so this is a question that I was asked this morning in LinkedIn by Kath, who wanted to know how we come up with how we recommend that you come up with blog post topics. And this is something I'm just trying to get out of this Facebook window here, which it won't let me. Why would anything go right? This is something we talk about extensively in our SEO content marketing course, because there are two reasons that you would blog. One is because you want something that somebody who finds your website through another means can read. So, for instance, if you want to demonstrate a depth of expertise, somebody might find your website one way and they might navigate to your blog posts and see that you have interesting content and interesting things to say. Alternatively, you might blog because you want to be found by Google. So if you want to be found by Google for writing a blog post, things have changed considerably if you've been around the internet a long time. So going back to the early to mid 2000s, the advice was, if you blog, Google will find it. Google loves fresh content on a website. Google will rank you because you have blog posts. And that led to people writing a lot of blog posts that were more like opinion pieces and columns and things that they thought and advice that they had to give. And that content can be fantastic. But these days, if you want to be found by SEO, you've got to be answering the questions that people are asking, and you've got to be answering them better than the alternatives. So what I wanted to offer in answer to Kath's question was this fantastic website, which is called Answer the Public. So you can find it at answerthepublic.com, and you get, if you can have a free go at it, so you don't have to have a subscription, but you can ask a simple question. My advice would be, you can see this is set to the UK, but you can set it to any one of a number of countries. It will set it to Australia because that's where we are. So you want to ask a question at the top level. So you don't want to get down too deeply into, for instance, they put chocolate in there. So you don't want to get down into the depth of going, how do I make chocolate cool down faster in order to make an icing? Because, that's very narrow. So you start at chocolate, because you'll see. So if I type copywriting in here and hit search, what Answer the Public is now doing is going out and essentially scraping Google. And when you type something into Google and things start dropping down to complete what you're writing, this is what Answer the Public is doing. And then it's sorting those answers out. So it's looking at, what are the questions that begin with what? What are the questions that begin with when? This is a phenomenal way to find things that people are asking, because Google has an incredible data set on what people want to know, because Google has millions of people every day asking questions. And so Google knows all the questions that all the people are asking, and it's very clever at sorting those out for you. So you can probably find a dozen blog post topics immediately by starting, in my opinion, with Answer the Public, if you start with the right top level questions. So don't go too deep, because you can see Answer the Public is going deep for you. How much to charge for copywriting, how to get started copywriting, how do copywriters make money, where to practice copywriting. You should also take a moment to infer things from those answers. So, for instance, from a lot of those questions, you can infer that these are questions being asked by people who want to be a copywriter, not people who want to employ a copywriter. So you also have to ask yourself, is that the sort of question that my ideal client would ask? And if it is the sort of question that your ideal client would ask, then you've got a potential blog post topic there. If it's a small question, one that you can answer quite quickly, you might think to bring a few of these questions together into a single post. So there are lots of ways to find topics to rank for SEO in terms of finding topics that your audience might find interesting, that you might want to put on your blog, share on LinkedIn, share on Facebook. Then you can be thinking about questions like the questions that people ask you when they're talking to you. Those generally make great blog posts because they are obviously the things that people want to know. Also, I like to think about if it's not for SEO, this is a great question to ask yourself. What do people think they know about my business, but they're wrong about? Because that's often interesting when you present somebody with some content, with an article that says, hey, here's a myth busted. Here's a thing that you thought that you can, you're actually wrong about. That's quite a grabbing and compelling hook. It's useless for SEO because if it's something I should know but I don't know, I'm certainly not searching for it. But it is something that makes great social media posts and a great post for your website. So that's answerthepublic.com, which is a great way to start. There are a lot of ways that we talk about in the SEO content marketing course that we run at Taylist. The next one's coming up later this month. That go through free tools like Answer the Public that you can use to find those topics, and then paid tools that you can use to drill deeper and find even more topics, and also ways that you can validate for sure whether a topic that you're thinking about writing is A, something that you can rank for, and B, something that you can the people are asking, and something that you have a chance of showing up in Google for. So that was a question from Kath that she asked on LinkedIn this morning. And Brian also asked a question, which was, how can you use market research to know your audience? And Brian's taken our landing page copywriting course, so he's done some of our market research instruction. And this is a phenomenal way. Like, Answer the Public is a great way to know what your audience is asking, because when we're writing a website, for instance, one of the things that we do is we look at search engine data to see what searches are being run in the area where our client operates. Because when you use those tools, you can learn a lot about where people are in their state of understanding what it is that you offer, and you can understand maybe some of their doubts. So the example that I tend to give people is, if you saw in your search engine research that a lot of people are searching for trustworthy real estate agent, then you know when you're writing a real estate agent's website that you need to write about that real estate agent as being trustworthy, and you have to do a lot to prove the trustworthiness. So those are things that are really handy to use search engine research to do things like looking at competitor reviews. So when people review your competitors, and indeed your own reviews, if you have enough of them to look through, what is it they like and what is it they don't like? These things can tell you a lot about what people are interested in and, what they're asking. And so similarly, you can use Answer the Public. You can put searches into Google. And one thing that's really interesting to do in Google, and I'll do this one, which is this is an example of one that we talk about in the SEO content marketing course. A lot of the time, you don't think about this because you type something into Google and results just come up, and you don't think, well, actually, and generally because the results are so good, you don't think to yourself, hang on a minute, how did Google know from such a vague question that you wanted to know this of all the things you want to know? So, I mean, I've just taken chicken. That is a one-word search term, incredibly vague. So I've put in chicken, and these are restaurants near me that sell chicken, cooked chicken. Yep, you've got the chicken Wikipedia entry. So in a way, Google is sort of hedging its bets. Maybe I want to know about chicken. But mostly it's either recipes or it's places selling cooked chicken near me. So what you can infer from that in terms of market research is when you start typing in terms that you think your clients might use in your industry, Google is telling you in the search results what people who type that in want to know about. So in Brian's case, Brian is a leadership coach. So if you start typing search terms about leadership coaching into Google, you can infer from the results that Google shows you that Google has proven over time that these are the sites most likely to get clicked by somebody who types that search term. Therefore, these sites are on the money about what your audience wants to know. So that's just a little market research tip that comes out of our landing page copywriting course and also is in our USP. So we've got a course called Make Your Business Irresistible. And in Make This Business Irresistible, we talk about ways, because the first thing you need to do to make your business irresistible, which means define your point of difference. Your point of difference is what makes you irresistible. The first thing you need to do is understand what people want to know in your area. So that's a market research tip. You just look at how Google presents the results to understand what people want to know. I also had a question. This one came in by email. So Phoebe had gone to our website, taylist.agency/SOS for standout session, and she'd used the form there to ask a question. And Phoebe's question is, how often should you change the words on your website? And focusing on the word change there, I think you should change the words on your website as your business evolves and changes. So as you learn more about your clients, you can change or /add, change or add to what you already say on your website. So we quite frequently adjust the content on the pages of Taylist, the services pages and some of the other pages, as we evolve our service, or as prospective clients ask different questions, then we'll go back in and answer them. So you should not be thinking of your website as fixed. Your website is not a moment in time. And I believe it's a mistake to think, well, that's my website for a year or 2 years or 18 months. That website should reflect what your business looks like today. So as soon as you offer a new service or you think about something else that your clients have asked that you could get ahead of, or what are you finding in those calls with your clients that maybe they ask you and maybe they don't ask you, but you say something to them and their shoulders relax and you can see, oh, okay, I've got you. You had a resistance to what I was offering and you relaxed when I said that thing. What is that thing? And make sure that is on your website. So you should be changing the copy on your website as frequently as you have an insight into your readers or when you offer a new service. So that would be my advice to you, Phoebe, on that one. And ST had a question, again, asked this morning on LinkedIn. If you don't follow me on LinkedIn, please do follow me on LinkedIn. I ask questions all the time. And I really like hearing from people. And ST's question is, what common marketing practices are no longer working? And, my initial reaction to that is, I don't know, because I don't think it's generally the case that common marketing practices stop working. I think common marketing practices start being used by people who don't have a strategy. And because they don't have a strategy, then they've hit on a tactic. So they've gone mad and they've decided to go live on YouTube, but they're not really sure why they're going live on YouTube, and it doesn't work. Or they go live on YouTube one Wednesday in October and they don't go live again. Whereas I think we know you've got to do it repeatedly over a period of weeks for people to get into the habit of believing that you're going to be there, for instance, and coming in and asking a question, thinking, oh, it's Wednesday, it's a standout session day, I'll go and ask Stephen a question. So I don't think it is that marketing practices become common and then stop working. I think people start using them badly and then they blame the tactic, which is like, just outside this door here, I've got a big toolbox full of tools. If I were to use any of them, the thing that I was approaching would be likely to be more broken afterwards than before it. And that would not be the fault of the tool. I thought the question, though, was particularly interesting because you hear so much and there's so much bloody noise about, oh, this isn't working anymore. I had somebody approach me for LinkedIn training and said, oh, some of the people in our office, they say LinkedIn is dead. It's all WeChat now. And I said to her, so are they all using WeChat? And she said, no, I don't think so. And I'm like, well, it sounds to me like they just have got an excuse for why they don't want to learn to use LinkedIn better. And their excuse is WeChat is taken over. But if you offer them WeChat training, they'd have another excuse. They wouldn't want to do training on WeChat. So it's about, knowing why you want to use something and what that thing is for, and then it will work. So you'll hear that LinkedIn is dead, which of course it isn't. You'll hear that Facebook is dead. You'll hear that email is dead. You'll hear that direct mail is dead. Radio is dead. TV is dead. None of these things are dead. There are people who are using them incredibly effectively, and they are out there. So what other questions have I got here? I'm going to go in because Shalini has asked live. So Shalini, hello. Thank you for watching us on YouTube. This is much appreciated. So I haven't seen Shalini's question in advance, so now I'm totally nervous that I won't be able to answer it. So I haven't even read it. I'm procrastinating. Shalini, I'm reading your question now. What are some of the things you'd consider when writing a website for educators, coaches, and professions like these? I'm going to assume from the question, Shalini, that you mean the educator or the coach has the website as opposed to the website is aimed at an educator or a coach as an audience. So if I'm wrong, feel free to add a comment and say, no, I mean my clients want educators as their clients. So the website has an audience of educators as opposed to it's for an educator. We've written a lot of websites for coaches, and I would say the number one problem that coaches have is they cannot explain what they do. It is really hard for them because it isn't tangible. A coach isn't like a physiotherapist where you can go in with a sprain and leave with a bandage or a stretch or an exercise feeling better and with a tangible result. Coaching can take a period of time. It's very hard to describe the transition from the person who arrived as the coachee to how they feel after having received a bit of coaching. But you do have to nail that down because people buy transformations. So somebody is going to an educator because they want to be transformed from ignorant to capable, or they want to be transformed from beginner to intermediate or intermediate to senior. Whatever it is that they want, it is a transformation. So you have to identify what is the transformation that somebody wants. So you need to know what is their pain at the moment, what is their burning problem, and then how would they like to see themselves in the future? So my consideration with a coach would be, one, it's brilliant if they can niche it down. So for instance, one of the websites we wrote for a coach called James, James specializes in people who have reached a ceiling in their career by being technically brilliant. So they are excellent at what they do, but they have reached a level of seniority where they can't get any higher unless they get better at managing people. And these people are not necessarily people. So they're technical experts. Maybe they're great in IT, and maybe they're a brilliant developer and they've risen up high because they do brilliant software development, but now they need to manage other people and they're not good at it. So that's his niche. So having such a clearly defined niche, which he didn't at the beginning of the process. So part of our process was really talking to him again and again and again and working out what was the commonality between the people he wanted to work for. And once we'd found that out, it unlocked the rest of the website because you knew exactly who you were writing for. So that's the second problem that coaches have. One, they find it difficult to describe what it is that they do. And then two, they are reluctant to narrow down who they do it for because they don't want to rule anybody out. But as we say in copywriting to all clients, as soon as you're not ruling anybody out, you're not talking to anybody either. If you're talking to everybody, you're not talking to anybody. So that would be my advice. If I've understood the question correctly, that your client is an educator or a coach and they want to talk to other people, do whatever you can to force them into narrowing their niche, which will scare the hell out of them. But they will get so many more people if somebody can read that website and think, that's me. I have that problem. I recognize myself. Yes, that's the destination that I want to get to. Oh my God, I must call this person, rather than somebody who has a website that says, wherever you are and wherever you want to be, I can get you there, because that will hit the objections. So Shalini, I hope that answered your question. Everybody who's watching, if you're watching recorded or live, we'd love it if you'd comment, hit like, hit subscribe, hit share. We're going to be back next week, and the more liking and commenting and sharing you do, the more people who'll know about this, the more likely we are to keep coming back, and the more likely you are to be reminded. And if you go to taylist.agency/SOS, there's a form where you can sign up and you get our newsletter, and you will also get reminders that the sessions are happening. A question I had by email from a subscriber to our mailing list, as it happens. This is from Katie Dorrell. Katie asked, when it comes to testing your website, big changes or small changes? And this is a great question, because to find out whether your website is working, you need to test it. Because all copywriting, all web design, all websites, all marketing is a hypothesis until it meets a reader. So you put something up and you see how people respond. But what you can't see is whether they would have responded differently if you'd said something differently. So the best way to do that testing is to present two versions of a page, the A version and the B version, which is called A/B testing. So what happens with A/B testing is when somebody visits your website, randomly they are assigned to the A page or the B page. And you have to have an action that you want them to take. And that action might be, how long do they spend on the page? Or more likely, do they click something, download something, send you an email? How often do they take an action that you want? And then the page that gets more people taking the action that you want becomes the winning page, and then you run another test. The challenge with this, for those of us who have small business websites with relatively low traffic, is that to have a statistically valid test, you need a reasonable amount of traffic. So if you only get 200 visitors to your website a month, and you do one version of a headline on a page and you do another version of a headline, or the classic example is you have a button that says click here and the button is orange and you try a green button, that's great if you're Amazon. You can put that up on Monday morning, and by 8:30, you've got a statistically valid number of people, and you'll know whether an orange button is better than a green button. If you've only got 200 people visiting your website a month, you could wait 2 or 3 months to find out whether the orange button beats the green button. So in those cases where you have low traffic, it's not a strict A/B test. So a strict A/B test is you change one variable, a headline, an image, a button color, one thing. Because when you only change one thing, then you know it's that one thing that has changed the result. However, when you have low traffic, consider making big changes, because you'll get an idea. So if you've taken an angle on a particular web page, so if I give you an example, our landing page copywriting course, for instance, is aimed at business owners, but also at digital marketers who want to upskill. So they want to get copywriting skills. Here's a course that they can take. That angle came about by doing some testing. So we did some testing. We put up different angles, and the one that got the best response was the one aimed not so much at business owners who wanted to write their own website. It was copywriters and marketers who wanted to write websites for other people. So they wanted to take a course, develop a skill, and sell that skill again and again. So now if you go to the page, it's the same course, but the page, as you'll see, is very much written for people who want to take on the skill and do it many times. But that came from doing a wholesale change of the page and presenting two vastly different pages to groups of people, not just changing a headline. So it's 1:30 now. I am inclined to think that half an hour is long enough to go into your feed. We do have some additional questions that people had asked, but what I'm going to do is hold those questions over till next week. I hope you will join us next week. It'll be the same time, 1:00 Sydney, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. If you go to taylist.agency/SOS, you will be taken to the standout session page, and you'll be able to sign up there, and you'll get reminders by email of when we're on, along with all the links. So please, if you're still with us, how fantastic, half an hour in and you're still with us, I'd love it if you'd click like on the video, comment, subscribe, like the page, all the things in social media, and we would love you to do. It's been fantastic talking to you. And if you're watching the recording, thank you so much for staying with us. And please join us live if you feel like it. Thank you, everybody. See you next Wednesday, 1:00.